Ohio has been home to some of the most notorious and heinous crimes in American history. From serial killers to rapists, the Buckeye State has produced its fair share of infamous criminals. In this video, we will be counting down the top 10 most notorious criminals from Ohio. From their shocking crimes to their eventual capture and punishment, we will take a look at the most notorious criminals to ever come out of Ohio. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn about the dark side of Ohio's criminal history. But before we get started, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified about our amazing upcoming informative videos. Now sit back, relax, and let's go. At number 10 we have Abdul Hassan. Abdul Hassan was a notorious criminal from Cleveland, Ohio who was convicted of multiple murders and other crimes in the late 1970s and early 1980s. He was known for his violent and erratic behavior, which often involved firearms and resulted in multiple deaths and injuries. He was involved in a string of high-profile crimes, including a bank robbery and a shootout with police. Despite his reputation as a dangerous criminal, Hassan was able to evade capture for several years and was considered a threat to public safety. Eventually, he was captured by authorities and sentenced to multiple life terms in prison, where he remains to this day. Number 9. Rowling. Danny Rowling was an American serial killer and robber who was active in the late 1980s and early 1990s. He was known for committing a series of brutal murders in Gainesville, Florida, in which 5 students were killed. Rowling was nicknamed the Gainesville Ripper for the way he mutilated the bodies of his victims. He was arrested in 1991 after a high-speed chase and later confessed to the murders, as well as several other crimes in Louisiana and Florida. Rowling was sentenced to death and executed by lethal injection in 2006, following years of appeals and delays. Number 8. Brian Golsby. Brian Golsby is a convicted murderer and rapist from Ohio, USA. He was sentenced to life in prison in 2018 for the kidnapping, rape, and murder of Ohio State University student Reagan Tokes. Golsby had a criminal record prior to the murder and was on parole at the time of the crime, wearing an ankle monitor. The evidence against him was strong, including DNA evidence and eyewitness testimony. He is currently serving his sentence at the Ohio State Penitentiary. Number 7. Eric Matthew Freen. Eric Matthew Freen is a convicted murderer from Pennsylvania, USA. He was arrested in 2014 for the shooting of 2 Pennsylvania state troopers, one of whom died from his injuries. Freen was on the run for several weeks before being captured by law enforcement. He was found guilty of first-degree murder, terrorism, and other charges in April 2015 and sentenced to death. He is currently on death row in Pennsylvania. Number 6. Anthony and Nathaniel Cook. Anthony and Nathaniel Cook are American serial killer brothers who committed a series of at least 9 rapes and murders of mostly couples in Toledo, Ohio, area between 1973 and 1981. Their guilt was established in the late 1990s by DNA profiling, after which both brothers were convicted and sentenced to long terms of imprisonment. Number 5. Richard Beasley. Richard Beasley is a convicted murderer from Ohio, USA. He was arrested in 2011 for a series of crimes that included the murder of 3 men. Beasley posed as a wealthy farmer on an internet job board, luring his victims with promises of a job, then robbing and killing them. He was found guilty of murder, attempted murder, and other charges in 2013 and sentenced to death. He is currently on death row in Ohio. Number 4. Michael Madison. Michael Madison is a convicted murderer from Ohio, USA. He was arrested in 2013 for the murder of 3 women whose bodies were found in East Cleveland. The victims were found wrapped in plastic bags, and Madison was found guilty of multiple counts of aggravated murder, kidnapping, and abuse of a corpse. He was sentenced to death in 2016 and is currently on death row in Ohio. The case received significant media attention and was widely considered a horrific crime. Number 3. Anthony Sowell. Anthony Sowell is a convicted murderer from Cleveland, Ohio, USA. He was arrested in 2009 and later convicted of 11 counts of murder after the remains of 11 women were found at his home. The victims had been killed over a period of several years and their bodies were discovered after a local woman reported a foul odor coming from Sowell's home. Sowell was sentenced to death in 2011 and is currently on death row in Ohio. The case received widespread media attention and was considered one of the worst serial killer cases in Cleveland's history. Number 2. James A. Wright Jr. James A. Wright Jr. is a serial killer from Texas, USA. He was arrested in 1983 and later convicted of multiple counts of murder after a string of deaths in the Texas and Louisiana area. Wright, a long-haul truck driver, would lure his victims with job offers and then strangle them. He was sentenced to death in 1984 and is currently on death row in Texas. The case received widespread media attention and was considered one of the most horrific serial killer cases in the state's history. At number 1 we have Ariel Castro. He is a former school bus driver from Cleveland, Ohio, USA who was convicted of multiple counts of kidnapping, rape, and murder. Castro kidnapped and imprisoned 3 young women, Amanda Berry, Michelle Knight, and Georgina De Jesus, in his home for more than a decade. The women were repeatedly raped and physically abused by Castro during their captivity. Castro was sentenced to life in prison plus 1,000 years in 2013, but committed suicide in his cell 1 month into his sentence. The case received widespread media attention and was considered one of the worst cases of kidnapping and abuse in recent history. And that concludes our countdown of the top 10 most notorious criminals from Ohio. From the brutal murders of Abdul Hassan to the kidnapping and abuse committed by Ariel Castro, these criminals left a lasting impact on the state and its communities. Their crimes shocked and horrified the nation, and their names will forever be remembered as symbols of evil. We hope that this video has shed some light on Ohio's dark history, and as always, please share your thoughts and comments below.